The altar's location revealed. The castle groaned and shuddered as Alex and Anna moved through its shadowy depths, its ancient stones seeming to pulse in rhythm with the bloodstone's hum. The energy radiating from the cursed artifact had grown stronger after Mihai's death, and Alex felt its oppressive weight more acutely with every step. "Where are we going?" Alex asked, his voice tight with apprehension. "To the heart of the castle," Anna replied. Her tone was calm but laced with urgency. "The altar is there, where it all began. It's the only place where the bloodstone can be destroyed." Alex's grip on his flashlight tightened as he glanced nervously at the shifting shadows around them. "And you're sure this will work? The ritual? It has to," Anna said firmly. "The altar was designed for one purpose, to channel the bloodstone's power. If we can sever the connection there, we can destroy it. But you need to understand." She paused, her gaze flickering toward him. "What?" Alex pressed, stopping mid-step. Anna hesitated, then sighed. "The bloodstone won't go willingly. It will fight you, Alex. It will try to break you. And if it succeeds..." She didn't need to finish the sentence. Alex swallowed hard and nodded. "Let's go." The chamber of the altar. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the entrance to a vast underground chamber. The air here was suffocatingly thick, and the walls were slick with condensation, as though the castle itself was sweating in anticipation. The altar stood at the center of the chamber, an imposing structure carved from dark stone. Its surface was etched with the same arcane symbols Alex had seen in the sacrificial chamber, their lines glowing faintly red. Channels ran from the base of the altar into the floor, forming intricate patterns that stretched across the room. Alex stepped forward cautiously, his eyes fixed on the altar. The closer he got, the stronger the bloodstone's hum became, vibrating through his skull like a malevolent heartbeat. "This is it," Anna said softly, her voice reverent but filled with dread. "This is where it all ends." Alex turned to her, his face pale. "What do I have to do?" The ritual explained. Anna knelt beside the altar, her fingers tracing the glowing carvings. "The bloodstone's power is anchored here. To destroy it, you'll need to reverse the binding ritual that ties it to the castle. That means breaking the seals that were created during its first sacrifice." Alex frowned. "How do I break the seals?" Anna reached into the folds of her tattered cloak and produced a small, curved dagger. Its blade was dark and pitted, but its edge gleamed sharply in the dim light. "You'll need to offer blood," Anna said, holding the dagger out to him. "The bloodstone's power was created through sacrifice. To undo it, you'll have to give something back." Alex hesitated before taking the dagger. The weight of it felt ominous in his hand, as though it were a living thing. "How much blood?" he asked warily. "Enough," Anna said cryptically. "The bloodstone will take what it needs to sever the connection. But you have to stay strong. If you falter, if you let it inside your mind, it will take more than just your blood. It will take you." Alex's stomach churned. He looked down at the blade, its edge glinting in the faint red light. "What if it's not enough? What if I fail?" Anna's expression darkened. "Then the bloodstone will consume your soul, and its power will grow stronger than ever. There won't be another chance." Preparing for the ritual, Anna guided Alex through the steps of the ritual, her voice steady and deliberate despite the tension crackling in the air. "You'll place the bloodstone on the altar," she said, pointing to a circular depression in the center of the structure. "Once it's there, the seals will activate. You'll have to carve the symbols into your palm. 3 lines to represent the severing of the 3 bonds, and let the blood flow into the channels." Alex nodded slowly, his throat tight. "But remember," Anna continued, her tone urgent, "the bloodstone will resist. It will try to manipulate you, show you things that aren't real. You have to focus on the ritual, on breaking the bonds. No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, you cannot stop." Alex met her gaze, his hands trembling. "What about you? Can't you help me?" Anna looked away, her jaw tightening. "I'll do what I can to keep the castle's other defenses at bay, but this part of the ritual, you have to do it alone. The bloodstone only responds to the one it has marked." Alex felt a wave of dread wash over him. "And if I don't survive?" Anna hesitated. then said softly, "Then I'll destroy what's left of you before the Bloodstone can take it." The Bloodstone's resistance. With shaking hands, Alex set his bag on the altar and unwrapped the Bloodstone. The artifact gleamed as he lifted it, its dark surface pulsing with a rhythmic glow that seemed to sync with his own heartbeat. As soon as he placed it in the center of the altar, the entire chamber seemed to shudder. The Bloodstone's hum grew louder, reverberating through the air like the tolling of a giant bell. The glowing symbols on the altar flared brighter, their light spreading through the channels carved into the stone floor. The temperature in the room plummeted, and Alex's breath came out in visible puffs. He gripped the dagger tightly, his knuckles white, and glanced at Anna. "Now," she said, her voice barely audible over the rising hum. Alex pressed the blade against his palm, the sharp edge biting into his skin. He gritted his teeth as he drew 3 deep lines, the blood welling up immediately and dripping onto the altar. The effect was instantaneous. The red light surged, flowing through the channels like liquid fire. The Bloodstone pulsed violently, its glow intensifying as if it were fighting against the ritual. The visions began. As Alex pressed his bleeding hand against the altar, the room seemed to shift around him. The walls blurred and twisted, and the air grew thick with the sound of whispers, low, insistent, and impossible to ignore. Alex, he froze, his blood turning to ice. The voice was familiar, achingly so. He turned toward the sound, and his breath caught in his throat. Standing at the edge of the chamber was his younger sister, her figure bathed in soft light. She looked exactly as he remembered her, bright-eyed, innocent, untouched by the tragedies that had come later. "Emily," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. She smiled, her expression warm and inviting. "You don't have to do this, Alex. You don't have to hurt yourself." "No," Alex said, shaking his head. "You're not real. You can't be." "I'm real," Emily insisted, taking a step closer. Her voice was soothing, almost hypnotic. "You can stop, Alex. Come with me. We can leave this place together. Focus." Anna's voice cut through the illusion like a blade. "It's not real, Alex. Don't let it distract you." Alex clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. The whispers grew louder, and more figures appeared. His parents, his friends, all calling to him, pleading for him to stop the ritual. But deep down, he knew the truth. The Bloodstone was trying to break him. "I'm not stopping," he growled through gritted teeth. The castle awakens. The ground beneath him trembled, and the red light pouring from the channels grew blindingly bright. The Bloodstone emitted a high-pitched shriek, its surface cracking as the ritual began to take effect. The shadows in the chamber writhed violently, coalescing into monstrous shapes that clawed at the edges of the light. Anna stood her ground near the doorway, her hands gripping a rusted iron bar she had pulled from the wall. She swung it at the shadows as they surged toward Alex, her movements swift and precise. "Keep going," she shouted. Alex forced himself to carve the next symbol into his palm, the pain sharp and immediate. More blood dripped onto the altar, and the hum of the Bloodstone became a roar. The final stage of the ritual had begun. The creature emerges. The air in the chamber grew thick and electric as the Bloodstone's resistance reached a fever pitch. Its glow pulsed erratically, casting sharp, shifting shadows across the walls. The hum had become a deafening roar, a sound that seemed to claw at Alex's very soul. But the noise wasn't just coming from the Bloodstone. From the corners of the room, the shadows began to move, stretching, writhing, coiling toward the altar like living things. Alex's flashlight, lying discarded on the floor, flickered weakly, its beam cutting jagged swaths through the dark. Anna stood at the edge of the chamber, her hands gripping a rusted iron bar. She turned her head sharply toward Alex, her expression grave. "It's coming," she said. "What's coming?" Alex shouted, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. The answer came in the form of a deep, guttural growl that shook the ground beneath their feet. From the darkest corner of the room, the shadow creature stepped into the light, its gaunt, monstrous form now fully realized. Its limbs were unnaturally long, its claws glinting like obsidian in the Bloodstone's red glow. Its skin was a sickly gray, stretched tight over its skeletal frame, and its glowing red eyes burned with ancient, malevolent hunger. The creature snarled, its mouth twisting into a grotesque mockery of a smile. "It's the Watcher," Anna said, her voice low and trembling. "The Bloodstone's guardian." The creature's attack. The creature moved with terrifying speed, lunging toward the altar in a blur of motion. Alex barely had time to react, throwing himself to the side as the creature's claws swiped through the air where he had been standing moments before. The force of the attack sent a shockwave rippling through the chamber, cracking the stone floor beneath the altar. The bloodstone pulsed brighter in response, as though feeding on the chaos. Anna sprang into action, swinging the iron bar with all her strength. The weapon struck the creature's side with a resounding clang, but the blow barely seemed to faze it. The creature turned its burning gaze on her, letting out a low, guttural growl. "Alex," Anna shouted, her voice sharp. "Keep going. Finish the ritual." Alex scrambled to his feet, clutching the dagger with trembling hands. The next part of the ritual required another offering of blood, another deep cut into his palm, but his focus was shattered by the creature's presence. The Watcher lunged at Anna, its claws slashing through the air. She dodged nimbly, her movements almost inhumanly quick, and brought the iron bar down on the creature's arm. It howled in fury, the sound reverberating through the chamber like a thunderclap. "Do it now," Anna yelled, her voice desperate. "The sacrifice begins." Alex forced himself to block out the chaos and pain, focusing on the altar before him. He pressed the blade of the dagger against his palm, gritting his teeth as he carved another deep line. Blood dripped onto the glowing symbols, which flared even brighter, their red light flooding the room. The bloodstone reacted violently, emitting a high-pitched wail that made Alex's ears ring. Its surface cracked further, fissures spreading like veins across its dark, gleaming core. The creature shrieked in response, its movements becoming more erratic. It twisted toward Alex, its burning eyes narrowing as it lunged for him. Anna intercepted it, slamming the iron bar into its chest with enough force to knock it back. "Over my dead body," she growled. The creature roared, its claws slashing at Anna with brutal precision. One strike connected, ripping through her side and sending her sprawling to the ground. "Anna!" Alex shouted, panic surging through him. She staggered to her feet, blood staining her tattered clothes. Her face was pale, but determined as she raised the iron bar again. "I'm fine. Just keep going." Anna's sacrifice. The creature lunged at Alex again, but Anna stepped between them, swinging the iron bar with every ounce of strength she had left. The weapon struck the creature's head, momentarily staggering it, but the effort left Anna vulnerable. The Watcher roared, its claws slashing through the air and striking Anna across the chest. She screamed as the force of the blow sent her crashing into the altar. "Anna!" Alex cried, rushing toward her. She held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. Blood trickled from her lips, but her eyes burned with defiance. "No," she said firmly. "You need to finish this." The creature advanced on her, its movements slow and deliberate, as though savoring the moment. Anna pushed herself to her feet, leaning heavily on the altar for support. "You won't win," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. "Not this time." The Watcher lunged, its claws poised for the killing blow. In a blur of motion, Anna stepped forward, driving the iron bar into the creature's chest. The weapon pierced its body, black smoke billowing from the wound as the creature let out a deafening shriek. But the victory was short-lived. The creature's claws plunged into Anna's abdomen, its red eyes flaring brightly as it lifted her off the ground. "No!" Alex screamed, his voice raw. Anna locked eyes with Alex, her face a mixture of pain and resolve. "Finish it," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The creature threw her lifeless body aside, her form crumpling to the ground like a discarded doll. Anna's true nature revealed. As Alex stared at her motionless body, something strange began to happen. Anna's skin began to glow faintly, her outline shimmering like heat rising from a flame. Wisps of light and shadow curled upward from her form, dissolving into the air. The bloodstone's hum grew louder, its glow intensifying as though feeding on her death. "Anna," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. Her body flickered, becoming translucent. And then he saw it, her true form. Anna was no longer the young woman he had seen before. Her spirit was fractured, her features warped and shadowy, bound by the same malevolent energy that radiated from the bloodstone. Her eyes, once dark and defiant, now glowed faintly red. "You're part of it," Alex said, realization dawning on him. "You're bound to the bloodstone." Anna's spirit turned toward him, her voice echoing as though coming from a great distance. "I told you the castle wouldn't let me leave. The bloodstone, it holds me here. But you can end this." "How?" Alex asked, his voice cracking. "Break the final bond," Anna said, her form flickering. "Sever the connection. Destroy it before it's too late." A final push. The Watcher turned its attention back to Alex, its rage palpable as it advanced on him. But Anna's spirit stepped between them, her translucent form radiating a faint light that made the creature hesitate. "I'll hold it back," she said, her voice resolute. "But you have to move now. Finish the ritual." Alex nodded, tears streaming down his face as he turned back to the altar. He gripped the dagger tightly, the blade slick with his blood, and pressed it against his palm one final time. The bloodstone wailed, its surface fracturing completely as Alex's blood spilled onto the altar. The glowing symbols flared brighter than ever, their light searing the air. Behind him, Anna's spirit let out a defiant cry as she faced the Watcher head-on. The creature roared, its form writhing as it clashed with her glowing figure. "Do it, Alex," Anna screamed, her voice ringing through the chamber. Summoning every ounce of strength he had left, Alex plunged the dagger into the center of the bloodstone. The ritual's climax. The dagger plunged into the bloodstone, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Alex gritted his teeth, his trembling hands gripping the hilt tightly as he drove the blade deeper into the stone's fractured surface. The red light emanating from the artifact flared violently, filling the chamber with a searing brightness that made him shield his eyes. The bloodstone's hum rose into a deafening, high-pitched wail that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere all at once. Alex's chest tightened as the vibration rattled his bones, threatening to shatter him along with the cursed artifact. "Stay focused," Anna's ethereal voice echoed through the chaos, her glowing form still holding the shadow creature at bay. The Watcher writhed and snarled, its claws slashing at her spectral figure, but she stood firm, her translucent light flickering with each blow. "The bonds," Anna cried. "You have to break them all." Alex forced himself to focus. He remembered Anna's instructions. 3 lines, 3 bonds. 2 had already been severed by his blood. The final bond required a complete sacrifice, something the bloodstone could not resist. The final offering. Alex's hand shook as he lifted the dagger again, the blade dripping with his blood. The bloodstone pulsed in response, its surface cracking further, as though sensing the end was near. "You can do this," Alex told himself, though every nerve in his body screamed for him to run. With a deep breath, he pressed the blade against his forearm, carving a long, jagged line. The pain was excruciating, his vision swimming as blood poured freely from the wound. It splattered onto the altar, filling the carved channels and flowing toward the bloodstone's core. The artifact's light flared brighter than ever, and the wailing hum became a piercing scream. Alex staggered back, clutching his bleeding arm as the red glow spread outward, consuming the symbols on the altar and the walls around him. The bloodstone shatters. The cracks in the bloodstone widened, jagged fissures spreading across its surface like a spiderweb. The artifact pulsed erratically, its glow flickering as though it were struggling to hold itself together. "No!" the Watcher roared, its voice a guttural growl that shook the entire chamber. The creature lunged toward the altar, its massive claws outstretched. Anna's spirit moved to intercept it, her translucent form colliding with the shadowy monstrosity. Light and darkness clashed violently, the force of the impact sending shockwaves through the room. "Finish it," Anna screamed, her voice tinged with both urgency and pain. Alex gripped the dagger with his uninjured hand and plunged it into the bloodstone one final time. The artifact emitted a blinding flash of light, followed by a deafening explosion. Alex was thrown backward, his body slamming into the cold stone floor as the bloodstone shattered into a million pieces. The castle reacts. As the bloodstone broke apart, the castle itself seemed to come alive. The ground beneath Alex's feet trembled violently, and massive cracks spidered up the walls, sending chunks of stone crashing to the floor. The intricate carvings that lined the chamber flared with one last burst of red light before fading into darkness. The Watcher let out a deafening scream, its shadowy form convulsing as the light from the bloodstone's destruction consumed it. "No!" the creature bellowed, its voice a blend of rage and agony. Its limbs twisted and dissolved into black smoke, its red eyes dimming until they were no more than faint embers. Within moments, the creature's form had disintegrated completely, leaving behind only a faint echo of its final scream. The collapse begins. The hum of the bloodstone was gone, replaced by the groaning of the castle's ancient foundations. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of stone and fire. Alex pushed himself to his feet, his body screaming in protest. Blood trickled from his arm and his countless bruises, but he ignored the pain. His gaze flicked to the shattered remains of the bloodstone, now nothing more than lifeless fragments scattered across the altar. "It's done," he whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief. "It's over." But Anna's spirit, flickering faintly now, shook her head. "Not yet." "What do you mean?" Alex asked, his heart sinking. "The castle," Anna said, her voice weak but resolute. "It's tied to the bloodstone. Without it, the castle will fall. You have to get out. Now." Anna's final farewell. The chamber trembled violently, a massive crack splitting the altar in two. Alex staggered as the floor beneath him shifted, the carved channels filling with dust and rubble. "What about you?" Alex shouted over the deafening noise. "You're coming with me." Anna smiled faintly, her translucent form flickering like a dying flame. "I can't. My soul is bound to this place. Without the bloodstone, there's nothing left to hold me together." "No," Alex protested, his voice breaking. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Anna said softly. She stepped toward him, her ghostly hand brushing against his cheek. Though her touch was cold, it carried a strange warmth, a sense of peace. "Thank you," she said, her voice barely audible, "for giving me freedom." Before Alex could respond, Anna's spirit began to dissolve, her form breaking apart into wisps of light and shadow. Within moments, she was gone, leaving Alex alone in the crumbling chamber. The escape. The castle was falling apart around him. Massive chunks of stone crashed to the floor as the walls buckled and the ceiling caved in. Alex sprinted toward the chamber's exit, dodging falling debris as he made his way back through the winding corridors. The hallways that had once seemed endless now felt like a maze, their familiar paths distorted by the castle's collapse. The air was thick with dust, making it hard to breathe, and the distant groaning of the walls grew louder with every passing second. "Come on," Alex muttered to himself, his voice a frantic plea. Just a little farther, he reached the grand staircase, its once majestic structure now cracked and crumbling. The main hall lay ahead, but the massive double doors that served as the castle's entrance were blocked by fallen stone. "No, no, no," Alex shouted, his voice echoing in the empty hall. He searched frantically for another way out, his eyes landing on a shattered stained glass window high above. The final push. Alex scrambled up the broken staircase, the steps crumbling beneath his feet. He reached the landing and leapt toward the window, smashing through the remaining shards of glass and landing hard on the rocky ground outside. Behind him, the castle let out a final, shuddering groan. Its towers collapsed in on themselves, and the walls crumbled into a massive pile of rubble. Dust and smoke billowed into the night sky, blotting out the stars. Alex lay on the ground, his chest heaving as he stared up at the darkened sky. For a long moment he didn't move, his body too exhausted to respond to the relief flooding through him. The hum was gone, the bloodstone was gone, and the nightmare was finally over. the cost of victory. As dawn broke over the horizon, Alex pushed himself to his feet, his body battered and his mind reeling. He looked back at the ruins of the castle, its once imposing silhouette now reduced to nothing more than rubble. The memories of Anna's sacrifice and the horrors he had faced lingered, a heavy weight on his soul. But he had survived. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the oppressive darkness that had haunted him was gone. The Bloodstone's curse was broken, and its evil had been vanquished. Alex turned away from the ruins and began walking, the rising sun casting long shadows on the path ahead. Though he carried the scars of his ordeal, he knew one thing for certain. He was free.